The parking lot is always full, as we can see in this video. There are some coffee shops where the parking lot is well filled before noon, like wired. People are in there for a drink that they need to have every morning, sometimes midday, other times during the day to pick themselves up every day. An addiction, an addictive drug. America's passionate obsession with coffee is a $30 billion industry. The coffee addiction is not an understatement. Americans crave their daily fix and drink an estimated 400 million cups a day. CNBC, one of the most prestigious news centers, says it's an addictive drug. People are out getting their fix every day. 400 million fixes per day. This is an enormously profitable drug business. $30 billion a year. Coffee is one of the most widely consumed beverages worldwide and in the United States. Millions of consumers all across the country cannot imagine starting their day without a hot cup of coffee. Breakfast, not so important. But give me my coffee, they say. The plant naturally contains caffeine, which can vary sharply between individual plants and between drinks. With 95 milligrams of caffeine in a brewed coffee, 40 milligrams in a can of Coca-Cola, and 3 milligrams in a cup of decaffeinated coffee. Coffee is used for people to feel good when they really have no reason to be feeling good. To feel awake and stimulated when they're actually tired and would like to sleep. A chemical in the central nervous system, adenosine, regulates your cycles of sleeping and waking. When you are awake, adenosine accumulates in the brain and eventually causes drowsiness by attaching to cells in the basal forebrain and inhibiting their activity. Adenosine stimulates signals that tell your body it is time to rest and activates the responses necessary to engage in full and sustained sleep. But what if this happens after you spent all the last night playing video games or studying, and now you're in mid-morning and you have a lot of work to do, as you can see in the picture there, and you're sleepy? Maybe you can use a drug to trick the body into thinking that it's not tired. Caffeine's effects of increasing energy and making you feel more alert are due to its interaction with the adenosine receptors in the brain. Both caffeine and adenosine are neurotransmitters belonging to a chemical group known as xanthine. In your brain, caffeine appears as adenosine to nerve cells and is able to bind to adenosine receptor sites. As a result, your brain does not detect adenosine and nerve activity does not slow down. Instead, caffeine increases brain activity, making you feel more energetic and less sensitive to your body's natural rhythms of wakefulness and sleep. Americans are spending $30 billion a year to trick their own bodies and tell the body, nah, you don't need sleep, you think you're tired, what nonsense. Drink the coffee and you'll think you have more energy when you don't. Almost 70 million Americans drink 3 cups of coffee each day. More than half of American adults consume coffee daily. Decaffeinated beverages usually still contain some amount of caffeine. 5 grams of pure caffeine can be fatal. It would take drinking about 40 cups of coffee in one sitting to get this equivalent. 70% of caffeine is consumed as coffee. More than half of Americans drinking their coffee every day. 70 million up at the 3-cup-a-day level. If you drink enough of this caffeine, you can be poisoned. But let's say that you're just drinking a little bit every day because you'd rather not rest when you're tired. Aren't there some negative consequences? A third of U.S. adults report that they usually get less than the recommended amount of sleep. Not getting enough sleep is linked with many chronic diseases and conditions, such as type 2 diabetes, heart disease, obesity, and depression that threaten our nation's health. Not getting enough sleep can lead to motor vehicle crashes and mistakes at work, which cause a lot of injury and disability each year. Getting enough sleep is not a luxury, it is something people need for good health. 70 million Americans at that 3-cup a day coffee level, sometimes much more. And a third of Americans sleep deprived. Accidents, injuries, mistakes at work, as we see here, and this lack of sleep goes along with heart disease and diabetes and some other bad diseases. So instead of letting the body regulate sleep needs, people use the drug, trick the body, think they have more energy so they can study all night, work all day, do all sorts of things rather than sleep when they need to. And this is only possible because of the drugs that they're using. Sleep is not a luxury, but coffee is, as reflected by the pricing. It's easy to pay $3.65 for a cinnamon dolce latte. Some luxury coffees cost upwards of $5. Is that really worth a little bit of drug? But you might be thinking, I get Maxwell House and brew my own coffee at home. You might also be thinking that alcohol drinkers get their beer in a 6-pack at the supermarket. But a lot of people like to enjoy their drugs in company with other drug addicts, which is why you have bars and clubs for the alcohol crowd, and why you have cafes for the coffee addicts, where they get together, sometimes bring in a prop like a book or a computer, where they pretend to be working or reading, but in reality they're interacting with their fellow addicts, socializing, and they're getting a better feeling than what they deserve, and the other people in the room are also busy cheating their body out of health and sleep. So you have something in common, this guilty pleasure, and the people have a real social time. Your body responds to blocked adenosine by increasing neural activity, which in turn stimulates the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland transmits signals to prepare your body for increased activity, and also activates the release of adrenaline from the adrenal gland. Adrenaline induces a number of responses throughout your body that make you feel more awake and alert. The liver releases greater amounts of sugar into the bloodstream to increase energy. Your pupils dilate, your heart rate accelerates, and your breathing tube opens in order to take in more oxygen. You're getting pumped up for action, even if you're just sitting at the desk with files, data entry, studying academic books, really boring stuff. You're telling your body this is really exciting. You get the adrenaline out there and you use up some of your energy reserves, pump a little bit more sugar into the bloodstream to activate or stimulate diabetes. You're all ready to go. Overproduction of adrenaline is very common. Most people are exposed to stressful situations on occasion, and so most of us are familiar with the typical symptoms of adrenaline release, such as rapid heartbeat, high blood pressure, anxiety, weight loss, excessive sweating, and palpitations. Overproduction of stress hormones. And a lot of Americans are getting totally stressed out, mentally ill, on medication because of the high level of stress, in many cases fed by caffeine consumption. More than 360,000 American deaths in 2013 included high blood pressure as a primary or contributing cause. That is almost 1,000 deaths each day. High blood pressure increases your risk for dangerous health conditions. First heart attack. About 7 of every 10 people having their first heart attack have high blood pressure. First stroke. About 8 of every 10 people having their first stroke have high blood pressure. Chronic heart failure. About 7 of every 10 people with chronic heart failure have high blood pressure. Again, that's the high blood pressure caused by the overproduction of adrenaline, which happens every time that you're drinking coffee. The more coffee you drink, the more you're setting yourself up for heart attack, stroke, and other serious diseases. In general, about 1 of every 6 adults will have depression at some time in their life. Depression affects about 16 million Americans every year. Many people who experience depression also have other mental health conditions. Anxiety disorders often go hand in hand with depression. People who have anxiety disorders struggle with intense and uncontrollable feelings of anxiety, fear, worry, and/or panic. These feelings can interfere with daily activities and may last for a long time, says the CDC. That's the anxiety produced by overproduction of adrenaline from drinking so much coffee. In the coffee shop, in your car on the way to work. First thing in the morning, getting rolling. Yes, coffee causes anxiety. Caffeine is the most widely used mood-altering drug in the world, says Roland Griffiths, a professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Neuroscience at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. People often see coffee, tea, and soft drinks simply as beverages, rather than vehicles for a psychoactive drug. But caffeine can exacerbate anxiety and panic disorders. Coffee and tea? Just something tasty to drink? No. They are just vehicles for administration of psychoactive drugs. A little bit like a syringe in the hospital. They want to give you a medication, they pump it in. The coffee and tea give you a drug that makes you anxious, can cause you to get totally depressed, and in many cases, clinically insane. It's no surprise that caffeine gets so much attention from scientists these days. After all, 80% of Americans drink it. In fact, occasional coffee consumption rose 6% in the last year alone, according to the National Coffee Association. At the same time, panic and other anxiety disorders have become the most common mental illness in the United States. When caffeine overlaps with these disorders, the result can be trouble. Mental illness, in its most extreme forms, insanity, when people go totally bats in the belfry. These are very commonplace, and the most common are the ones caused by anxiety. As coffee consumption increases, and new coffee shops are being built all over the place. Studies show that a cup of coffee causes a calcium loss of 2 to 4 milligrams. The percent of men 65 years of age and over with osteoporosis of the femur neck or lumbar spine, 5.1%. Percent of women 65 years of age and over with osteoporosis of the femur neck or lumbar spine, 24.5%. Drink the coffee, deplete your calcium reserves, and then when you get old you can be hunched over and have breaking bones. So why not be free? The truth is, the coffee is just a vehicle for the administration of a psychoactive drug. A drug which can destroy your mental well-being, get you filled up with anxiety, depression, and cause osteoporosis, heart disease, diabetes, and many other diseases. Not to mention the tragic consequences of sleep deprivation. So many car drivers and truck drivers have accidents because they're tired at the wheel. People make mistakes while at work because they're just so tired. Because instead of sleeping when the body wanted it, they were busy drinking their coffee and playing video games, watching Netflix, whatever they could do instead of do what the body needed. Why bother with coffee? Why not save your money for more meaningful things?